My name is Lou Molitor. I'm president of the Kenosha Area Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome everybody to our legislative update via Zoom. We are looking forward to hearing from 5 of our elected officials: State Senator Robert Wirch, State Senator Wangaard, State Representative Samantha Kirkman, State Representative McGuire, and State Representative Todd Onstead. We'll begin getting to them in just a minute. First of all, I want to thank John Bolt and his team at Clark Dietz for sponsoring this event. I know John is on board listening. John, thank you, and we appreciate your sponsorship. We did ask earlier in the week if any of the attendees had any questions that they'd like our elected officials to address. We received a number of them, and we did send them to our elected officials to incorporate in their remarks. So hopefully that all the questions that were sent in will be answered. This is an update, not a town hall, so we won't have time for questions at this particular event, but perhaps in future events we will. At the end of the event, we'll have the contact list in the chat screen so that you'll be able to write down the contact information for our legislators. And we also plan on having another event sometime in February, more to come on that. So without any further ado, our first presenter will be State Senator Robert Wirch from the 22nd District. Senator Wirch, it's all yours.
Well, good morning. Thank you for having this presentation. It's always important that we can talk about issues with our constituents out there. Let me say, this is a transition time for the legislature. And I always smile when people say that, we have to have term limits for legislators. Well, we're having natural term limits right now. I was thinking about it the other day. The Democrats picked up 2 seats in the Assembly in the election, and the Republicans picked up 2 seats in the Senate in the election. And we had people moving on. Senator Fitzgerald is going to Congress. Senator Tiffany is going to Congress. Both of them were state senators. Senator Risser, the longest-serving state legislator, is retiring. Senator Hansen's retiring. There are legislators who were defeated in the election, and there's new blood coming in, legislators who were just elected. So we're having a kind of a natural turnover in the legislature, and certainly in the Senate. We're going to see 2 new chairs of the Joint Finance Committee, the most powerful committee in the legislature. So there is turnover in the legislature. Now, our 2 biggest jobs for the year, certainly it's a budget year, and with all the challenges of bringing forth a balanced budget, basically balanced budget in a pandemic year, that will take up most of our time between January and probably June when we get a budget out. And then, of course, every 10 years we have to look at the legislative maps and come to some type of conclusion for the maps for the next 10 years. Clearly, we have been called some of the most partisan maps in the country, and certainly I hope that we can address that situation. So those are some of the challenges that we have in this session, and we will be dealing that with a lot of new personnel in the legislature. And with that, I will defer to some of my colleagues if they want to say something.
Okay, thank you, Senator Wirch. We appreciate your comments. Next on the list was State Senator Wangaard. Emily, is Senator Wangaard with us here?
Not seeing him, Lou. Best to move on.
Okay. Perhaps he'll join us. He's delayed and he'll join us a little later. The next on the
Hold on,
agenda.
you got me now?
Yeah, I was gonna say I do see him on the call here.
Can you
Oh,
hear
he
me?
is? There he is. How you doing, Senator?
Oh, I didn't push all the right buttons, I guess.
So you are next as far as a presenter. So the floor is all yours, sir.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to see a lot of smiling faces this morning. It is, I think, a new time for us with the pandemic and issues that are occurring. I think we're becoming more sensitive to what relationships are all about, the importance. It's a good thing we have this opportunity to be able to share, I think, our ideas and the ability to at least be able to look at people instead of just being on a conference call. I think that improves a lot of the processes. Some of the questions that were sent out to us, I think, were pretty timely for what's happening in all of our communities across America. And we are blessed that we have uh, I think, ability in this part of the country to work with other people to try to solve issues. And I think that's what I think is probably one of the most important things is that we work together. And there's a lot of issues going on with the election process. There's a lot of irregularities that have occurred. A lot of I think things that are going to be challenged and need to be challenged. And we'll let that work through the process. But that doesn't stop us from being able to work together on issues that are important to our constituents um, in the state. And I say that widely that, even though we represent districts that are in southeastern Wisconsin, ultimately the decision process that we go through with dealing with things that affect not only our constituents, affect the rest of the millions of people that actually reside here in Wisconsin. So that hasn't changed. Our mission hasn't changed to try to make opportunities occur for our young people and to get people back into the workforce. We obviously are doing that here in southeastern Wisconsin, even though there's been some challenges with, of course, this pandemic again, and being able to commit staff and commit um, resources to building out organizations that want to expand here. That becomes a little bit of a challenge because of just the staffing issues and what's happening. We have some really good stuff coming up, though, I think, with Pfizer being a resident of Pleasant Prairie, that they're going to be supplying vaccines here in the upcoming weeks, not months. And we're working through legislation to deal with that issue because there's been some little hiccups with the delivery process because of administrative rules from California that govern how they operate as a company. So we're working on that, and I think I'll get bipartisan support on that. So just glad to hear everybody's voice and that everybody's doing good. And I'll turn it over to Tip. Are you next?
I think that's up to Lou entirely. So
I wasn't sure because you had popped up on my screen. I thought they were gonna let you go next. So Lou.
I was just letting them know that you were on the call.
Oh,
I saw
good.
your smiling face, Senator.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you, Senator Wangaard. We appreciate your comments. And yeah, we do have Representative Kirkman as the next speaker. I would ask if everybody remember to, if you're not muted, please mute yourself so that you don't your picture doesn't come up with somebody speaking here. So, but right now we have State Representative Samantha Kirkman from the 61st Assembly District. Representative Kirkman.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here in this virtual format. Like the previous speakers have said, we're getting used to this new communication. Back in the day, Senator Joe, I don't know if he could handle the Zoom calls, or even my predecessor, Cloyd Porter, since I helped him turn on the computer when I worked for him years ago. So this is truly unique for all of us, but I'm glad that we're here I'm glad that yesterday we had a ribbon cutting in Summers at Oak Fire. I'm familiar with Oak Fire because it's in Lake Geneva, so it's down the road the other direction. So it was great to be there to welcome a new, actually, hospitality business to our area that took the challenge and took the plunge to open under these extreme and difficult circumstances. So again, on that overview, I agree with Senator Wirch and Senator Wangaard on some of their overviews, as this is a transition period for us. So it's a little bit different. I know we had tried to schedule this legislative breakfast, I think last winter, I want to say, Emily, I think we were working on dates for January or February last year. So, you know, giving an overview of where our committees are. Right now, I'm still the co-chair of the Joint Audit Committee. I also serve on the Ways and Means Committee, Judiciary Committee, State and Federal Committee, and Children and Families Committee. This week, I've had 2 committee hearings, one in audit, and we did a high-level overview of our state's IT program, and also then did a audit conversation with Governor Tommy Thompson, who came and testified for about an hour and 45 minutes. So it was his first time he's testified before a legislative standing committee since around 1986. I think actually Scott from Senator Wangaard's office pointed that out to my office. So it was great to see the governor in a virtual format giving a high-level overview of the UW system and the challenges they're facing with higher ed and the pandemic and IT and their programs that they've had over the years. That was the main focus, was the IT, but obviously when you give a politician a few minutes, we got to hear a lot of things from the governor. So that was very, very interesting. And then Wednesday, along with Representative McGuire and Representative Ohnstad, we had a Ways and Means overview on the economic outlook forecast for the future with Secretary Peter Barca, which I've given that presentation to Emily, I think, and hopefully she'll be getting that out to the rest of the members here. And then also heard from Director Bob Lang, who is our Fiscal Bureau Director, who's been in that role since, well, I don't know, since he's been at the Fiscal Bureau since the late 50s, early 60s. So I think Bob Lang a lot of times should just put together our budget because his insight and forecast are usually spot on. So even though the legislature is not meeting in session, there are still many things happening at the Capitol. And then to Senator Wangaard's question with regards to the vaccine, and it was a question that was submitted here. Another thing that I gave to Emily was the state's role in how they're going to be distributing the vaccine. As Senator Wangaard mentioned, Pleasant Prairie is going to be the main, one of the main distributing centers for the Pfizer vaccine. There are 3 locations in the United States that are going to be distributing the Pfizer location, and Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin, and Memphis, Tennessee are the 2 largest distributors of this vaccine. Pleasant Prairie will supply all of Western America. So when I have been in conversations with the folks at Pfizer, it is a critical thing that we do need to update the one statute that conflicts with California's law. So Pfizer has a detailed report, and the state of Wisconsin has a detailed report on how the vaccine will get out. First, essentially to the hospitals, their vaccine. It is a little bit more challenging to distribute because it has to be kept at such a cold, so cold. The hospitals are prepared to take on that vaccine distribution in the very short term without any legislative oversight, probably, from what I'm understanding. So the vaccine itself, when it's distributed to other entities, the Pfizer vaccine at least, needs a kit that goes with it. And that's the challenge on the distribution level. So the vaccine itself can be distributed because that is made by Pfizer, but it's the third party that makes the kit that goes with the vaccine. And so that's when the challenge comes in. So to the person who asked, I think it was Lou Perini who asked about the distribution of vaccines. Yes, the state does have a plan. I asked Emily to share it with the rest of the group so that people can get familiar with it. I'm also trying to figure out, because we're not scientists here as politicians, the difference between the vaccines that are being produced by Pfizer and others are made vaccines or manufactured vaccines. They're not grown vaccines. So that's where it's a little bit different as well. As people ask us questions about, is the vaccine safe? It is. They've gone through the trials, and hopefully we can, through different media sources, get that information delineated to our constituents who, again, this is the one thing that can really help combat the virus and help bring us back to a normal setting. So I know there are a lot of other questions that I think are going to be asked, and I just don't want to focus on one, but just because the vaccine was something that will really impact our people here in Wisconsin. As one of my constituents said, he actually drives truck. I chatted him, he called me about election issues, but then talking to the constituent, he's getting schooled up on freight distribution of the vaccine. So really our constituents are going to be on the front line to help distribute the vaccine going forward. So, again, I don't know, Lou, how we're going to run this, if we're going to ask all the other questions, or shall I defer my time to the next, to Representative McGuire and Onstead?
Well, Representative Kirkman, we weren't going to have time for questions because this was just an update and not a town hall or a forum like that. If we have some time at the end, I can review some of the questions for all of you to look at. But if you want to say any more comments on the questions that you were sent, please feel free to at this time.
So two other things, I guess. Then on the redistricting process, that bill will be introduced in the legislative session now that the census has completed their work. Actually, the state actually builds our redistricting maps off local entities. So every county in the 72 counties, as they put their maps together, that's one of the first steps. This is the third time that I've actually been through the redistricting process. So every time it's unique. I can go back to 1980 where my predecessor, Cloyd Porter, and we talked a lot about how the process has worked over the years. But again, it truly starts with local maps, so local jurisdictions. People ask me a lot, why does my district have this little piece that comes out at Strawberry Creek? Well, that's because the city of Kenosha annexed over the border many years ago. And so that's actually Representative McGuire's district, and not my district, but it's west of the I. So those things, and why things look jagged like they do, because we build our maps and keeping them one person, one vote, communities of interest, and compact and contiguous. So those are the three qualifications that the legislature looks at when it comes to the maps. And then one of the other things, there were two questions on homelessness. So just wanted to bring an overview of that as well. The legislature last year had a speakers task force on homelessness, and it really yielded some great work. And people talk about speakers task force. Well, there have been many over the years, Representative Niagara and the Hope and committee and such, that have yielded legislation that has actually gotten all the way through to the governor's desk. So there are 8 bills that have been introduced. Only one actually made it to the governor's desk. Hopefully we'll reintroduce the other ones through further conversation, or maybe the governor will include it in his budget remarks as well going forward. So again, I just wanted to give a snapshot, but the vaccine, just because I knew a little bit more about it, I've been schooled up from a lot of the interested parties. So again, I'll defer to my colleagues on the other questions. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Kirkland. We appreciate your words and the information that you shared with us. Again, a reminder, please, if everyone could just keep their selves muted during the presentation so we don't see your picture or your icon come up until we're all done. It would just make it a nicer presentation for everybody. The next speaker on our program is State Representative Tip McGuire from the 64th Assembly District. Tip.
Thank you, Lou. And I just want to thank all of you for being here. I know we've been trying to have this happen for quite a while, so it's good to see all of your smiling faces and to be able to give you an update today. So the first thing, obviously, since the last time we spoke, there have been big changes in our state and country. The biggest one, of course, being the global pandemic. There have been a number of initiatives that the state has undertaken using federal CARES funds to assist small businesses and to assist in keeping our economy going. Most recently, the governor announced an additional $45 million for the We're All In grants for restaurants. This is following two previous rounds of funding distributed to small businesses, totaling, I think, $220 million and helping 50,000 Wisconsin businesses. In addition, the governor announced an additional $30 million for hotel and lodging operators and live entertainment venues to help them through this time, since many of them don't have the same ability to operate as they previously did. So there's obviously been quite a bit going on that end in trying to help small businesses succeed in what is an incredibly difficult time. As we're looking forward, I think we are going to continue to make sure that we're prioritizing small businesses and trying to make sure that we're keeping our economy going. Obviously, the state doesn't have the same capacity to do that the federal government does. We do have a balanced budget requirement. That means that we can't borrow money to finance ongoing operations. And so the federal government, if they're going to pass additional stimulus, that would likely go through the states, and then we'd be able to distribute that to businesses that way. But it's unlikely that we'd be able to borrow too much money to be able to help businesses. And so it's whatever would come through in the state's budget, through the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, or through the federal government. In regards to the vaccine, I think my colleague, Representative Kirkman, hit it right on the head. She passed along to you, and I think Emily sent you all the state's plan. Obviously, there are still some things that are up in the air when it comes to the vaccine and how it will be distributed based on, CDC recommendations on who should get it first, as well as, other information that we just don't quite have yet, like how many doses do we get, how much more and how fast we get after that sort of thing. So there's still obviously variables that haven't been fully filled out yet, but as that happens, I'm sure the plan will be updated. I think it's going along a hub and spoke model is from what I understand, and I think Representative Kirkman referenced that as well, that Pleasant Prairie will sort of be distributing to a much larger area of people. So that's my understanding of the vaccine. On the homelessness questions, I'm going to defer to my colleague Todd Onstead for that. I think he has a more recent update. I do know that the Senate doesn't plan on coming back in. Senate Majority Leader or incoming Senate Majority Leader Devin Lemke said that the Senate doesn't plan on coming back in. And so I don't believe that any more of the homeless bills will be passed this year. And so they will have to be introduced next year because of that. However, one of the things, so, obviously a lot of what we work with are budgets and laws, but there are other ways that we can be helpful. And earlier this year, I worked with both the Racine Landlord Association and the Kenosha Landlord Association in essentially creating a process by which they would reach out to their tenants prior to eviction and just check with them to see if they were part of the unemployment delays. If the tenant was unable to pay as a result of that, and then if so, the state would be able to provide information that would let the landlord know, obviously this is still something that essentially on the state's end, not on this individual's end, that they shouldn't be evicted for that. And so it's a voluntary program. The landlords don't have to do that. However, the landlord associations recommended to their members and provided them with the resources that I had worked with them to get from the Department of Workforce Development, so that they could communicate with their tenants to make sure that hopefully we can avoid unnecessary evictions, and certainly hopefully so we can avoid any evictions that would be the result of delays in unemployment. On that note, I think that was a question that was asked as well. It's my understanding that the state has completed about 93 or over 93% of the cases that were in the unemployment backlog. However, that still means 7% of people that had applied are waiting. The incoming, so the governor obviously was very concerned about this, and I believe fired the secretary of the Department of Workforce Development, and he has since been replaced. And so the incoming acting secretary has identified the end of the year as a goal to be all caught up. So we're very hopeful for that. I know it's harmed a great many people, the fact that we have an unemployment delay. And certainly many of the people that I've talked to, that's been one of the biggest issues that we've helped people through this year, as I'm sure is the same for all of my colleagues here. But we get calls from people and we try to get them the services that they need and that they've earned. And so that's certainly been something that we've discussed quite a bit, and hopefully it's something that we can fix moving forward. I'm just going through the questions here. I know Representative Kirkman had responded to Anthony Freeney's question regarding essential workers. It's my understanding that the first tier, sort of tier 1A of receiving the vaccine, will be hospital workers, but then after that, we will likely see that the next tiers include members of the essential workforce, although we don't know exactly how that'll be defined at this point. So hopefully moving forward, we'll be able to protect the workers who have been so brave in getting out there and working in an incredibly difficult time and putting their families at risk and honestly working under very difficult circumstances. I think Christine Morganroth had a question regarding is there a lack of political engagement in our society or community for citizens wanting to run for office? Is that a trend? And I think most of us would say there's been certainly an uptick in the amount of political engagement. I don't know if there's been necessarily a change in how many people have run for office, but I know certainly we've seen an uptick in voter turnout, especially this past election when we had some of the highest voter turnout, I think, in the country's history. And so certainly there are more people who are voting and having their voice heard. And so obviously that's a good thing. We want to see people vote. We want to see people get out there and talk about the issues that are important to them and sort of thing. But I don't know if it's had any meaningful change. We've seen any meaningful change necessarily in people wanting to run for office. I would say, if anything, we would have seen more people running for office these days, but I could be wrong about that. And then lastly, there was a question about the houses being divided and typically voting along party lines. That's sort of, I think that's sort of a misconception that a lot of people have. Many of the the headline getting items are items that we disagree on. But often there are things that we work on very well together. I think it's safe to say that Speaker Robin Voss and I don't necessarily agree on everything. However, last year we passed a bill through the Assembly together to get taxpayer incremental financing extended for a firehouse in Mount Pleasant. Representative Kirkman and I have worked together on a number of initiatives, one of them to protect the shoreline from erosion. We have a number of homeowners who really struggle with the erosion along the shoreline, and she's been working very closely with me on legislation to do that, as have another Republican, Joel Kitchens from Door County. In addition, you know, Senator Van Wangaard and I have, we haven't actually introduced a bill yet together, but we have a couple that we've been looking at and sort of exploring options there. So there's still a lot of room for us to work together. I think, you know, it's helpful that in southeastern Wisconsin, we've always had sort of a collaborative mentality when it came to legislation and how we work through the issues that face our region. And there are certainly obviously broad line issues that we may disagree on, but I think working together in collegiality is certainly something that is a part of our political culture in southeastern Wisconsin. And so that's something I'm very proud of, frankly, that we can disagree without being disagreeable and that we can still work on issues of mutual concern. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Todd Onstead, and thank you all for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Representative McGuire, and we appreciate your comments and the knowledge and information that you gave us. Moving along, we do have State Representative Todd Onstead from the 65th District. Todd, it's all yours.
Okay, well, good morning, Lou, and thanks to both you and Emily and the Chamber for putting this together this morning. Certainly appreciate the opportunity. We've all heard in Kenosha, we've all heard at one time or another when County Executive Cruiser says that Kenosha is a great place to live, work, and play and raise a family. And I'm sure that he would agree, and we all would agree, that it's also a great place to do business. And the 2019 CABA report describes us as the hottest location and points out that since 2013 that we've created over 10,000 jobs in 19 million square feet of development. And Mayor Interagency, of course, has a very ambitious downtown program right now, innovation center in the old Chrysler site, which is right in the middle of my district. And the other thing that I think that was really positive in the last few months was the series of 4 different meetings, all of which I had the opportunity to attend, that the mayor had to address issues of equity going forward in Kenosha. And I think that this is going to be very beneficial. Obviously everybody has pointed out that the COVID pandemic is the #1 hurdle that we're all facing. The Ways and Means Committee meeting that Representative Kerkman mentioned earlier that we had, I really encourage you to take a look at the slides that Secretary Barca provided us, because I think that it really spells out how important the CARES Act has been in terms of kind of softening the blows to the economy. And just some highlights from that. The CARES Act, just last week, as Tip mentioned, 663 hotel and lodging operators and 96 live entertainment venues will split $50 million to keep them in business over the next few months. And over the period of the pandemic, the CARES Act has actually benefited 50,000 businesses in our state. 15,000 farmers received direct aid to keep their farms operating. Helped more than 14,000 households make their rent on time, helped families with utility bills, helped with childcare, broadband access. And the National Guard has just been phenomenal in all of this. Over 930,000 specimens have been taken of the National Guard to kind of figure out where we are in the pandemic, and what a great job that they've done. And $130 million has been spent on healthcare worker shortages and creating capacity at hospitals and skilled nursing facilities. So despite all of the challenges, I think that the CARES Act has really been responsible for kind of keeping our state economy pretty stable as we go into the next session. And several people have mentioned the budget that we will be working on as soon as we get back to in the Capitol in January. And I know that I and others have already been talking to the governor about some of the particular needs that we're interested in seeing. And one of my roles, I think, has always been to help facilitate both the projects that the county executive and the mayor are putting forward that make a lot of sense in terms of making sure that our community remains one of the hottest spots, not only in southeastern Wisconsin or in Wisconsin, but actually in all of the country. Unfortunately, going to the question of homelessness, first of all, I'd just like to give a shout out to Tamara Coleman, who just does such a phenomenal job over at the Shalom Center. She just has really risen to the challenge, and not only with COVID, but also just the whole operation that she has been running over there. And so certainly that is really a flagship for homelessness programs around the state. And several months ago, I had the opportunity of introducing the Wisconsin Interagency Council on Homelessness chairman to both Tamara and also to that operation. And kind of as a result of that, just yesterday, him and I met with the mayor in terms of some new homelessness priorities and possibilities going forward. So hopefully that can bear fruit as well. Now, unfortunately, as of January 2nd, millions of Americans and thousands of Wisconsinites will be facing homelessness as they are subject to eviction. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like anything will happen between now and then to kind of curb that. And also, unfortunately, there are still 7 out of 8 bills that are kind of languishing in the Senate right now and will not be voted on apparently. So they will have to be kind of taken up from scratch, to deal with some of the issues of homelessness as we move forward. Some of the committees that I currently serve on, I think, are kind of ideally suited to Southeastern Wisconsin. Representative Kirkman, Representative McGuire, and I are both on Ways and Means, which has been one of the most active committees last session and promises to be in this session as well. I'm also the ranking member on Jobs and the Economy, serve on Workforce Development, Labor and Integrated Employment, State Affairs, and Tourism. So kind of all of these, I think, are right in the wheelhouse of, kind of what's important for Kenosha. Thinking about the next session, I look forward to, a budget that, represents fair taxation for, the people who live not only in the 65th district, but all throughout Wisconsin. And also that really helps to address some of the specific needs that Kenosha has, not only as a result of the pandemic, but also as a result of the civil unrest that we unfortunately experienced this summer. So I look forward to the session, and I turn it back over to Lou, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here today, Lou.
Thank you, Representative Onstead. We appreciate your words and your comments. At this time, I'd like to give the opportunity for all of our speakers to give final comments. We'll start with Senator Wirch. Also, in your final comments, if you have any final comments regarding the vaccine and the vaccine distribution and any aid or assistance or recovery assistance for businesses, I think those are probably the most critical things that people are thinking about nowadays in the business community. So just if you can take a few minutes for final comments and any other comments on those two issues. Senator Wirch.
Well, let me start off with some of the questions that I didn't talk about in the opening. I just assumed there was an opening, we would get to them. First of all, the homeless issue. I had the privilege of, I'm an old guy, helping start Shalom 40 years ago, and work with the great Greta Hansen. And so certainly send money to Shalom to help out with the homeless situation. But let me add Kenosha Human Development Services. They have a fund to put people up for short periods of time in low-cost hotel rooms. So certainly that would help. I'm deeply angry about the lack of action in the state Senate over the homeless issue. We had a chance to disperse $15 million to 72 counties. Not much, but it would have been a help. And nothing has happened in the state Senate. And let me remind people that last spring, you can check the Kenosha News, Republican senators assured us that there was plenty of time to deal with this issue, plenty of time to deal with the homeless issue. And now the clock is running out. We're not going to meet in the month of December, and we have to start all over again on the issue next year. So I think that's real negligence on this issue by the state Senate. Let me, I wanted to say that because we had at least two questions on that issue. Insofar as helping business, we have to do whatever is possible. Clearly, let's hope that both sides can come together with bailout money from Washington, that finally there's a sense of urgency between the Senate and the House, and hopefully they will come up with some money to help small business. And certainly we should look to help small business in the budget when it comes up early next year.
Thank you, Senator Wirch. We appreciate that. Senator Onstead? Is Senator Wanstead with us still? I see that we have still 70 people.
And one,
Perhaps he isn't, I'm not sure. We can get back to him if he is.
Lou, I still see him here, but it's Wangaard. I think
I'm
you
sorry.
combined the two names.
It
was
Senator Wangaard. My apologies. I was thinking about Todd. I should have been thinking about you. So
Okay, you're in really big trouble.
I know. I'm probably gonna, job security is threatened too there with my.
I didn't react because I thought you were giving Todd a
I know.
shot at coming up and speaking. Anyway, I think there's a lot of things going on. Just like with let's talk about the homeless issue first. Those bills I think are about 3 years old from when they actually were initiated to working itself through the process. And obviously we got blindsided by the coronavirus. We're doing virtual meetings, which have been, really slowed the process down also. But I know that those things are going to be considered in the Senate. I think we have new leadership in the Senate, so we're going to be looking, I think, at things a little bit differently. While I didn't agree with all of the 8 bills that were brought forward, I did support dollars going into the local shelters to help them. I thought that was imperative to get that done right away, and we were able to get that passed in the Senate. But it's just like sometimes your spouse will look at the checkbook and there'll be a full checkbook, and they think they can continue to write. You have to look at what the balances are too, and what's going to have the greatest impact. And I think that this pandemic has really forced us to look at a lot of those issues from a different perspective. So in one way looking at this, I think, what's the word? I kind of believe that maybe that might have been a good thing, because we can actually look at focusing dollars where they're going to have the greatest impact. And as I look at just the homeless issues, for the first thing that I'm chat about here is, we have so many good organizations that have stepped up to the plate and that have helped people in need and brought them in. And a lot of those places have closed because, they're old farts like me there that are running a lot of those operations, because we just don't have the young people that are filling in the empty spaces that are occurring as the senior people leave. And so a lot of churches have not had the ability to be able to provide those spaces. And this creates a lot of critical issues also. So, my understanding is that the evictions are still in place, that they cannot be evicted. Federal dollars have been brought forward to help assist that. And I know the governors were just released more dollars to help with those types of issues also. So I think we're working at attacking that problem. But quite honestly, I don't know how you're going to eliminate it totally. Especially, it just makes everything so much more difficult when you can't just go and talk to people directly, and you have to set up conference calls and Zoom calls first. So that's still creating a problem with the technology issues that are happening. And a lot of people that are at that level of need, they don't have the ability to get into the technological aspects, because a lot of the places they would have done that are closed now. And so, these are all things that we have to continue to work on, and we have to continue to deal with. I'm finally, when it comes down to the unemployment, that's another big issue that with calls that come into my office and people that contact me over the last year, and the governor finally saw the light and fired the guy that was not doing a very good job at getting things accomplished. I think they were taking a lot of phone calls, stacking those up when they didn't have people on the other side actually dealing with the claims. So that became a huge issue. And there are still, even though we say that there's 93% are dealt with, 70,000 people that haven't gotten checks. And this is just unconscionable that those individuals would have thousands of dollars coming to them so they could pay their rents and put food on the table, haven't been able to do that. So I think that they're changing that up, and they're working towards accomplishing a positive with that. So rather than talk about old things or water that's already over the bridge, we need to really work at accomplishing that so that we have a better system in place, given the difficulties we're dealing with all the pandemic issues. I think that we're on the right track with that. So hopefully by the end of the year, they said that they were going to have this done in August, and then it was September, October, and now we're into December, and I'm just really hoping that the department gets those staffing people allocated appropriately so we can get that dealt with. That being said, I think I've responded to most of the questions, and I think Tip was pretty eloquent with dealing with, people think that, we're always at each other's throats and that, we're not working to accomplish things together. This is one of the things I talk about pretty regularly to other state legislators, is that we really do enjoy good relationships with the people that have been elected in southeastern Wisconsin here. And we don't always agree on things. And my goodness, I wouldn't want that. I want to have a good discussion where we can talk about things and we can have the ability to maybe modify where we're coming from, because our job as legislators always is to create legislation that is necessary to resolve an issue without creating more issues someplace else, and that's what we should be really focusing on. And I'm proud to say that the individuals that we have in southeastern Wisconsin here, all of us that I think are on the call here right now, do that. And again, we may not see eye to eye on everything, but I wouldn't expect that we would, because I don't think that's good government either. So I look forward to working with everybody in the future about the 8 bills that haven't been passed. I think that might be a godsend in a way, because I think we can work on those. I think senators and representatives have been to modify those to fit what's happening right now, and hopefully we'll get those across the finish line to make an impact on what's happening. So I hope everybody stays safe, and I'll turn it over to Lou to pass it on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Senator Wangaard. We appreciate your comments and your wisdom. We have our next speaker for final comments and to address any further questions would be State Representative Samantha Kirkland.
All right. Well,
Kirkland.
all right. Can you hear me now, Lou? Well, I will just begin. Again, I just want to go back to what Senator Wangaard and Tip and others had said. We might not agree on every issue, and that's okay, because I do believe in a healthy debate. I say, what husband and wife agree 100% all the time on every issue? I believe there is, and that really does help do our job better, because again, I'm not an expert in every field. Like with regards to the vaccine, I'm getting schooled up on that issue every day, because the questions that our constituents are asking are things that I am not a scientist. So for me to really explain something to a constituent in the detail that a scientist would have regarding a vaccine is hard. So with regards to all the issues that come before our desk every single day, it is challenging. Once the pandemic hit, in the first 3 months, I called back 500 constituents. And I really prided myself on that particular thing, because again, we couldn't go out and meet with people. I had small business owners, many of them that I live, a short distance from, that were calling me crying, upset about, the challenges that they were facing with trying to keep their employees employed, to keep their doors open, and all the things and challenges that small businesses were facing. Then you had the group of people who were unemployed, a group of people who have never been unemployed. That first week, I had several dental hygienists call me. I've never applied through the system. I've never needed it. And those were the things that I think all of us in our jobs were trying to deal and trying to get schooled up on. Unemployment system, I'm familiar with it, but again, the back door and things that the constituents were asking us how to get online, the calls weren't being answered at the call center. And then that's where myself as a legislator, when we did pass our COVID bill back in April, we were able, and one of the provisions in that bill was to allow the state auditor to go in and take deeper dives in Act 185. And so out of that, 2 audits came of our UI system that were very, very helpful to us. We haven't had in-person hearings on them, talked to people about the audit findings, And hopefully in the next few weeks here, we can have a deeper dive into the UI system. I had reached out to Secretary Frostman at the time. He's now gone, because I wanted to actually go into the call centers and look, because I was getting phone calls from constituents who work in call centers in the travel industry. One of my constituents who lives in Brighton, she's like, Sam, why aren't we, hiring, the leisure industry, call centers to help with our unemployment, because I'm good at talking to constituents on the phone. So again, those were the things that we were hearing and I was hearing, and how did I use them to try to help the system? Was trying to reach out to the secretary's office to give them ideas and suggestions so that we could bring our system back up, because people don't understand that we're legislators. I'm not the secretary. I'm not a Division 8 agency head. And that was really one of the biggest challenges that we faced, that I've ever faced in my time in the legislature, is trying to use some of the knowledge that my constituents were giving me and to help actually state government run better and more efficiently. So again, those two audits came out on a UI. I'm hopeful that we can have some more in-depth conversations going forward on UI. The technology side, as I talked about earlier in my remarks about our IT. Again, making sure that when UI and we have a conversation this year and we upgrade our system with regards to the employee portion of UI, when you have to apply, communicates with other state agencies. And I brought this up to Secretary Barca, that, Department of Revenue has an IT system and DWD has an IT system, and those two systems should be communicating going forward. They can't in some ways because of federal law, and I wasn't realizing it was federal law. I thought it was more state law. And Peter explained to us that it was federal law that sometimes hampers our systems from being able to communicate with one another. So that gave me an idea in hopes to actually reach out to Congressman Stiles' office, because if we can try to, I don't want complete open up door, and hurt our security of those systems. But when it comes to verification of somebody's employment, so they can get benefits quicker, it shouldn't be as tough as it is. And those are the things that, again, through our jobs, through our communications with people, that if we can make the system better going forward. And for employers, I think they've been hit hard. Their rates have not increased this year, but I know going forward, as the CARES Act money doesn't backfill the unemployment system, those are things that I know that small business owners are really, are starting to reach out to me now about what's going to be in the future. So that's one of those future considerations as we get additional CARES dollars coming forward, making sure that the rate on unemployment for our small businesses, because again, that's a tax increase. People don't realize they're the ones who actually pay into the system to keep the system whole. We've been fortunate that the CARES Act has helped and such. So that's with regards to unemployment. With regards to just, again, supporting our businesses, this is where these conversations are really beneficial. I'm glad we have some closing remarks here, because, we got a list of questions today, but I know that doesn't answer everybody's questions. So if, our contact information, again, feel free to reach out to any of us, because it's hard to have a back and forth dialogue with a computer screen, and really actually understanding what people's concerns are. We all have the list of questions, but again, I look for feedback from people, usually in audiences, if I'm headed in the right direction or not. So please reach out to us, and maybe we can continue on this dialogue and do something in the future, and make this more regular than just once a year, because there's going to be things, I think, going forward that we can continue on these dialogues. And I don't know if my colleagues feel the same way, but this was easy. I didn't even have to drive down and go to the Kenosha Country Club, which I usually love. And I have my own coffee here. I got a refill, and I was going to try to make some breakfast to bring as an example, but I didn't really eat this morning. So so much for allowing us to be here, and I hope we can continue this dialogue going forward.
Well, thank you, Representative Kirkman, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. And yes, we do want to do these again. I think we have another one scheduled in February, which we'll send out information on. And with the ease of Zoom, we could have a number of them. All it is just a matter of getting used to how Zoom works and getting proficient with it, which we're still learning. This is our first Zoom event when we had this many people on and speakers, so we'll get better at it. Moving on right now to Representative McGuire for final comments, and go ahead, Representative McGuire.
Thank you again, Lou. Yeah, I want to echo many of the sentiments of Senator Wangaard, Senator Wirch, and Representative Kirkman. We do want to hear from you. It's been absolutely very helpful to have spoken with so many of you during these last months as we've been trying to find ways for to make sure that the CARES Act and other assistance programs that we're working on have been effective for you. So if there's anything we can do, reach out at any time and just make sure that you give us your thoughts, because it's important that we hear from you. I agree with both Senator Wangaard and Representative Kirkman that absolutely we need to work on our unemployment insurance system this coming year. We need to reduce and eliminate some of the snags that have caught people up and have made it very difficult for them to get the benefits that they've earned. You know, for some people, it's just different little things that send them into the arbitration process that is very difficult to get out of. And so it's important that we streamline that and we make sure that people can get what they've earned again. And then I know, Lou, you had requested that we talk a little bit more about the vaccine and about the state assistance for small businesses. I can sort of reiterate what we talked about earlier, is simply that you know, a lot of the state assistance that will be coming in the future, hopefully, is going to be dependent on a federal stimulus package. Unfortunately, you know, state government just won't have the same access to resources necessarily. I'm certain that there will be additional assistance for small businesses in the state budget in some form. It just won't be in the large quantity that I think that we would hope we could get to our small businesses in Wisconsin. So I think federal stimulus is absolutely essential for that. I think, Senator Wangaard, that you may be screen sharing right now.
Yeah, I think you are too, sir.
So with that, so I think we're very hopeful that we'll continue to get some federal assistance. I know, as Representative Onstead referenced, in the analysis that was provided to us from Secretary Barca and that we were able to listen in on the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means, it did indicate that a lot of the support we've received thus far has been beneficial to helping our economy continue to run. However, it's an incredibly difficult time for so many of you and for so many businesses. And so there's still more support that needs to be done. So I'm very hopeful that we will see a stimulus package coming forth from the feds, and that we can hopefully make sure that all of you and all of our struggling small businesses receive what they need. That said, you know, like both Todd, Representative Onstead and I referenced, there has been some new initiatives announced this week in which funding will be provided to restaurants and live venue operators, and so hopefully that will be helpful as well. And then lastly, I think a number of us have spoken about the vaccine, and there is a plan. Obviously, some details are still being finalized, and we're very hopeful that will be distributed as soon as it's approved. If there's any other questions as things move forward, as we continue to hear news on that, please, you know, just let us know. We're happy to fill you in on anything that we know, and would be happy to provide you the details that we're providing. So as always, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lou, for organizing this, and thank you, Emily, for organizing this. And I'm looking forward to working with you all to continue to make Kenosha County a wonderful place to live and work and play, as the county executive says. And I firmly believe that our best days are ahead of us. So if there's anything I can do for any of you, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Representative McGuire. We have put the contact information from our speakers today in the chat. So Emily, thank you for doing that. And please refer to that if you do want to get in touch with any of our speakers. Representative Onstead, the show is yours to conclude here.
Okay, well, I'll keep it short, Lou, because I know that the 9 o'clock witching hour is upon us. But I just want to thank you and Emily once again for hosting this event, and also for everybody in the audience for their participation this morning. I would just like to, obviously we all agree that this has been tragic in terms of the unemployment situation for just thousands, tens of thousands of Wisconsinites. But I really believe that that help is not only on the way, but that help is here with with kind of a new administration in DWD, and new call centers have been organized and hired to help in that process. I believe that Google is helping as well. But as legislators, I think that it's important that we kind of put our money where our mouth is in the upcoming budget. I'm sure that one of the things that we will be asking for is money to replace the 50-year-old computer system, which was kind of the root of the problem to begin with. That we obviously need new technology to deal with the possible huge spikes in unemployment, and that we obviously saw during the pandemic. So we have to remember that when we're voting on issues coming up in the next few months, that we obviously need that new computer system. And I'd also like to just kind of agree with Representative McGuire and Senator Van Wangaard, and I believe Representative Kirkman as well, when everybody has talked about Southeastern Wisconsin representatives have a history, I think, and a proud history of working together to make sure that things that affect our area are done correctly. And I know that I worked with Senator Wirch in that regard as well. And just as one example, we recently we made things a little easier in terms of decommissioning the Pleasant Prairie power plant, and I was pleased to work with Representative Kirkman on that. And I was also pleased to work recently to co-author a bill that will help with a local developer assistance here in Kenosha County to help it make it more possible to create wetlands, which obviously we need additional wetlands here in southeastern Wisconsin because of all of the development that we have going on. So there's a lot that we can do to work together on. We're of course going to have some differences. There's no question about that. But let's try to figure out a way to in the new year work through some of those. So I'd just like to leave everybody with this and close. Other than thanking everybody for being here this morning, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
Thank you, Representative Onstead, and thank you again for sharing all your knowledge with us. One last time, thanks to all of our elected officials for being here today, taking some time out of your day. We wish you the best of luck in 2021 in accomplishing the goals that you have. The business community of Kenosha County stands ready to assist you, and we look forward to hearing from you on your initiatives. Also, again, thank you to John Bolt and the folks over at Clark Dietz for sponsoring this. We're going to have another one in February, as I mentioned. More information will come out. We have some other virtual opportunities coming up for our business members. So let me take this final opportunity to wish everybody happy holidays. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you real soon. Thank you.